Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, and score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name's Callum. Yes, I have returned for an episode, and today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, how are we?
I'm good, mate. Obviously managed to keep our little unbeaten run going at the weekend there, albeit probably not the result folk were looking for. And as Davey mentioned after the game, he was glad there was a couple of goals in the end. Otherwise, they would have had to refund fans because it was a bit of a bore fest at times. But we'll obviously come on to talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, all good at this end. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I'm well. Also, I've been absent for a few weeks from the podcast, but it's good to be back, and not the best game to talk about, which I'm sure we'll get into, but it'll be good to kind of speak about the end of the season, which I think we feared would maybe peter out, but we've got a lot to play for still, so fingers crossed. As always, you can find this episode as well as all of our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. So just search for Talk Livi, follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll start the episode off by discussing our 1-1 draw with relegation threat in St Johnstone.
It's part of the staple diet of Scottish football, and we've been spoiled this season at the Tony Macaroni Arena. We will discuss our pie of the season.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty excited for the pie review, to be honest. And finally, we'll look ahead to our final game of the season. First of all, we travel to Paisley to take on St Mirren before finishing up the campaign at home to Dundee.
So we'll just jump right into things. Livingston welcomed St Johnstone to West Lothian at the weekend as the Lions look to edge closer to securing 7th place. Of course, St Johnstone fighting for their lives at the moment as well. A late Jack Fitzwater equaliser rescued a point for Livy in what was your usual typical Livingston St Johnstone tight encounter.
It wasn't a classic, was it? It really wasn't. Me and Angus obviously spoke about it last week, and we said that the first goal was probably going to be very important in the game. I'm surprised we saw a second goal in the game, to be honest, never mind just one. It really wasn't a classic encounter, and as you say, it's very typical of the games that we tend to have with St Johnstone, but it didn't look like we were getting off to the best of starts. Obalai made a bit of a howler early doors, which allowed St Johnstone to get the ball wide. Henry's had a chance, which has gone over the bar. I think Nubley's had an opportunity where he's got himself free in the box, and his effort wide's pretty tame. And I think Stevie May had an effort from distance, which made Ivan Konovalov make his first save in a Livy jersey. And Odin Bailey had one that was blocked first half. But other than that, it was actually very similar, I thought, to the Hibs game. The first 45 minutes in the Hibs game, there was nothing really going, and it had that kind of end of season feel to it. I think we were. And I listened to Davy's comments after the game with yourself, and I know he was saying about trying to get space in behind, and I thought we were almost trying to sucker St Johnstone in a little bit, because we know what they're like. They are quite difficult to break down despite their league position. Their defensive record's not that bad. So I thought we were almost trying to allow them to come on to us a little bit to try and open up a bit of space in behind, which we didn't exploit, as Davy said. that was kind of my thoughts looking at it. Second half, I think we came out and, again, similar to the Hibs game, I think we were a little bit more on the front foot second half. And the best opportunity of the game at that point was Odin Bailey's one, where Isles managed to get the ball in behind, kind of what Davy was probably looking for in the game. And unfortunately, he's kind of hit Clark's legs with the effort. Alan Forrest came on as well. He had almost a trademark Alan Forrest goal coming in off the line, and he's whipped that just past the post. But we then, the classic St Johnstone sucker punch that we seem to suffer on a regular basis against them, and Glenn Middleton's come off the bench and headed in at the back post. Really sloppy goal from our point of view, I have to say. I think Brown's got far too much space out on the right-hand side. You know he's right-footed, you know he's going to come back inside. I think we allow him to do that too easy. Granted, it's a cracking ball to the back post, but Isles nowhere near Middleton. To be totally honest, I think he's marking him the whole way into the box, and he's not tracked the run properly. And there's not a lot Konovalov can do from that range. But we did manage to get ourselves back into the game, and I think it was well worked. Obviously, Holt's played the 1-2. It's a cracking delivery by Holt, by the way, unbelievable delivery. And Pitts is. I was just about cheating. I thought Pitts had scored with the initial header. It's a cracking save by Clark, but Fitzy's managed to bundle the ball home, and I think it's the least we deserved from the game was minimum a point. However, we did try our best to chuck it away at the end. Again, Isles made a lapse in concentration. Hendry's got in, but Ivan's done really well to kind of stand up big and not allow Hendry kind of an easy opportunity on the 1v1. So, Ivan's done his job in the end there, but it wasn't a classic. It's not one we'll remember for a while, but I think, to be totally honest, a draw, kind of tweeted it from the podcast account after the game, I think a draw was a very, very fair reflection of the game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't think either team were at their best at all. Certainly from our point of view, we've played much better than that the last couple of games, even and against Motherwell as well, and despite obviously what happened in that one. But yeah, I came under I wouldn't say criticism, but I got a wee bit of a backlash as such when the 1-0 against St Johnstone back maybe 4 or 5 games ago now, that obviously hampered our top 6 chances, and Callum Hendry put them in front for the penalty spot. But other than that, in that game, I think we were much the better team. We had all of the ball, but again, as I was saying, I came under criticism because I was admiring St Johnstone defensively, and I don't think that's, again, anything from a negative, from a Livingston point of view. I think, it's just difficult at times to break teams down. And again, it proved to be the case, as I mentioned, both games we aren't at our best. But, they're a good defensive side. And I think their only real problem is the scoring of goals. I think it was their 23rd goal in the league at the weekend, I want to say, which is abysmal when you look at it. 36 games, in the low 20s of scoring goals. Defensively, they're not too bad. I think they've conceded 2 more goals than us. So maybe they had Callum Hendry the full season, they wouldn't be in this predicament. So they're obviously very, very solid at the back. They're difficult to break down, as was proven there. And they've got a good goalkeeper in Xander Clark. So, I did in that 1-0 feel that we got kind of harshly criticised, and we had that. We had all those, the penalty shouting, etc. But Saturday was a tough game. It's, as we mentioned in the kind of prelude to this, it was a typical Livingston St Johnstone game. If Odin Bailey puts that chance away, albeit it is a good save from Xander Clark, but we're speaking to James Penrice on commentary, and he's saying exactly what you're saying. The first half, it was very, very similar to the Hibs game, where St Johnstone probably edged it in the first half, and then we come out, we're a wee bit better, start of the second half, and then I think Odin's chance is pretty much bang on the same time mark as Scott Pittman's goal. So, that goes in, it's almost a carbon copy, but then we have that foothold in the game. But it just wasn't to be. And yeah, you mentioned that goal there, it's poor. It's a typical St Johnstone sucker punch, and I was a wee bit sleepy at the back, and same with the chance when it goes to 1-1 as well. We almost threw away the point But I'm quite happy for Fitzy to get the goal, as you mentioned, a great ball in from Jason Holt. It was good because, you know, on occasion we just lumped the ball into the box from set pieces. I think that's probably, for me, I know it's probably being slightly harsh because we have had, again, a good season. But for me, you know, something that can be improved on certainly is goals from set pieces, those kind of areas. Not as tall as St Johnstone maybe, or your Motherwells or teams like that, despite, you know, being labelled with this big physical side. But, you know, the likes of Fitzwater in there, Obalai, guys like that, I think we should be scoring more goals. Certainly Nubley in the box as well, albeit I think he was substituted at that time. But yeah, it's a good ball in from Holt. We saw on a few occasions that the corners weren't working. We were just whipping it in, and I think Clark came for a few, or McCart pretty much won everything in the air. Gordon as well. So we kind of reworked that angle a wee bit. You see Pitt's brilliant run into the front post, and not sure how many headers he's won in his career, but was a very good one for him. Hit the target, worked the goalkeeper, and then Fitzy's in at the back post. So I think probably a point all in's deserved. It wasn't really fun reliving it and talking about it here.
Typical that this is the episode you come back for, and it's got to be one of the drabbest games we've watched this season. But, you know, to kind of go back to what me and Angus said, we said the first goal against St Johnstone was always going to be crucial in terms of going on to win the game. And you kind of go back to that Odin Bailey chance. I think if we go one up in the game, I think we go on and win the game 100%. Maybe by a couple. Because St Johnstone were in a position coming into this game where it was their kind of last chance saloon, you know, 8 points adrift with 9 to play for. You don't know what to expect from teams in that situation sometimes. Don't know if they're kind of going to down tools a little bit. I know they've still got the playoffs to come, but it was very unpredictable what you would get from St Johnstone, I think, to an extent. And had we taken the lead in the game, I think we would have won the game comfortably, because we would have had St Johnstone would have had to open up in terms of trying to keep any slim hopes that they had alive of avoiding the playoffs. But there was another landmark. We've been speaking about him a lot in the last few weeks. 300th appearance for the club for Scott Pittman, the Pumphy Playboy, as Daniel Shaw always likes to call him. Just what a remarkable achievement. He's only the second player in the club's history to achieve that mark, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, right?
No, I think it's phenomenal. Pitt's probably the most humble guy at the club. Speaking to Nicky Devlin last week after the game against Hibs, and I think he was saying, you know, he was desperate to give his captaincy to Pitts, you know, for these 2 games, and Pitts is just, you know, working away, not interested in it, doesn't want the limelight. That just typifies the kind of guy he is. I saw a social media post. I can't for the life of me remember who it was, so I do apologise. I'm not wanting to steal this person's thunder, but I thought it was, you know, it summed it up so well in the fact that every club would want a Scott Pittman in their team, in terms of, you know, not just the player he is, but the guy he is. You know, he's that local guy who's come from the juniors, he's worked his way up. He doesn't give a jot what he earns. He could be away. You know, he could have. I think he was linked with a move to Aberdeen a good couple of years ago. You know, he could have moved on to bigger and better things, but he stayed. He's happy. He's local. His family's in the area. He's got a wee son that kicks about the stadium all the time. You know, he just absolutely loves it at Livingston, and it's such a good story as well with the manager and Pitts played together in the juniors and things like that. It's just, you know, his work ethic. He kind of epitomises Livingston. I think a lot of people saying that Sean Byrne pressing against Dundee United at Tannadice, you know, that typifies Livingston, and Pitts obviously finishes off that goal. Probably is most important for the club, but for me, Scott Pittman just embodies Livingston, and it's, you know, delighted for him. 300, he's gonna overtake Keegan Jacobs. He'll probably hit 400 or 500 if we're being honest. So no, absolutely delighted for him. Couldn't happen to a nicer, more humble guy, and what a player he is as well.
I have to say, I enjoyed a few of the pictures that they put up with his 300th appearance shot that they gave him, especially the one with Davy Martindale. Davy looks like a proud dad standing next to Pitts there. He's obviously have a very close relationship, but as you say, I mean, I think it's a miracle that more clubs haven't looked at Pitts, to be honest. As you say, he's that type of player that any fan would want in their team. And I go back to what I would class as our big turning point in the season, which was thoroughly enough against St Johnstone, the 3-0 win up at McDermott. And Pitts had been out for a few games and came back in that day, obviously scored and was instrumental in that performance. And it was the first time I went, that's a Livy-like performance. And the key bit in that game was having Pittman back in the team. It's frightening. He does a lot of work that goes unnoticed for the team week on week. But see, when he's not in the team, God, it's noticeable. You really do notice it when he comes back into the side. And as you say, it's a remarkable achievement. I think Davies already spoke about getting him tied down for a testimonial. I don't know if Pitts will even take the testimonial. He'll probably try and get out of it somehow. Knowing him, he won't want that limelight around him. But he's certainly a player that's thoroughly deserving of it. I think me and Angus obviously talked about him having his debut last week was Ivan Konovalov. But it was quite difficult to judge his performance. However, he had a bit more to do this weekend. Bruni, you're the resident amateur goalkeeper. You were once man of the match in a 10-0 defeat. How you even get that? I don't know, right? But what's been your take on Ivan so far?
I thought he was impressive at the weekend for what he had to do. Obviously, don't think he has a chance for the goal. It's a header from about 4 or 5 yards out, and Ayo's obviously lost his man, unfortunately. But you know, he's bailed us out on a couple of occasions. I'm not quite sure what Callum Hendry's doing towards the end. He should square it, and St Johnstone go on to win 2-1. I think it's a good recovery from Fitzy. You know, Ayo sells him short, and you know, Fitzy's overcommitted with the tackle. I think he probably just tries to take him out and take a booking, or maybe it would have been a red. I'm not sure, but you know, he gets back. Hendry kind of slows down a lot. Ivan spreads himself well, makes the save, kind of bails Ayo out, and then you know there's one on the left hand side as well. Middleton, you often see them go in from that kind of angle. Fitzy's kind of shown him down the line, and he's smashed it with his left foot. But you know he's done well to get down, and you know I think it goes out for a corner eventually, but he's desperately claiming to the referee for a throw in and thing. So he's obviously learning the tricks of the game already. But no, I was impressed with him. I think he looks comfortable from cross balls as well. You know, there was one where he came out and he dropped it, but he recovers it straight away. So, yeah, he looks decent. He looks very, very solid. The biggest compliment I could pay was I wouldn't think that was his first or second game in Scottish football. So, no, he's done a really good job. And same with Morgan Boys, I think, you know, he's come in and slotted in really well as well, despite, you know, not playing in probably his natural position too.
Yeah, Morgan obviously had a solid enough game once again, as you say, kind of out of position. But that point does mean that I think we've made that our second best points tally in top flight history as a result of gaining that point, which, you know, there'll be a few fans that feel a bit down in the dumps that we've not made top six, but that's quite a remarkable achievement in itself, isn't it?
No, of course it is. I think that was the aim, obviously, since the failing to get into the top six, you know, is to go on and beat last season's points tally. And we've done that. We've still got 2 games to go as well. I think it's good. I kind of mentioned at the start, it's good that the season hasn't just petered out, because I think that was a fear for a lot of people. It was for me anyway. I was absolutely devastated, and it was a really weird one because I was almost as flat as I was after the cup final. And I think that was the case in the dressing room as well from the guys that I've spoken to. You know, it was so flat, and to pick themselves up and you know, go on to get those results against Aberdeen at Pittodrie as well. You know, bearing in mind it's still a tough place to go despite how absolutely stinking Aberdeen are at the moment. But and Hibs as well, you know, it's okay, you could just say they're the names, but 2 good results against 2 clubs that we should have no divine right to beat. Arguably earlier in the season we don't get that point. We don't go to the end. We almost give up. So yeah, it's 2 decent games coming up to improve that points tally. But if we're to get 7th, I'd be fairly happy after obviously the disappointment. But it does kind of leave a sour taste in your mouth. You know, the fact that we then get top 6 a wee bit. I was so confident that if we got into that top 6, we would have made 4th our own. You know, you look at Motherwell, Dundee United, Ross County fighting it out. I think we're better than all of them, if I'm being honest. So I spoke to Davey during the week and he said we almost left it a little bit too late. You know, if you look at that start, maybe you can look at different points of the season, different games of the season. But match day 33, we almost left it a wee bit too late. And we've now turned it on. It's kind of a mix of both. You're a wee bit gutted that, you know, we're starting to come into our own now and probably would have gone on to do well if we were top six. But you're also happy that, you know, the season's not petering out. There was probably a fear of relegation as well. Not a massive fear, but I think it was 8 points between us and St Johnstone as we went into the split. You know, if St Johnstone had won those 2 games and we'd have lost to Aberdeen away and Hibs away, it would have been 2 points coming into that game at the weekend there. So thankfully St Johnstone are terrible. We've gone on to win those games, but yeah, there was a fear it could have petered out, but you know, we've done well to bounce back.
Award season continues, and this is likely the most prestigious of them all. It's, of course, pie of the season. Broonie, it's fair to say that we've been spoiled at the Tony Macaroni Arena with some of the options that we've had this year, but what pie stands out for you over the course of the season? I know you're a bit of a connoisseur.
We have been spoiled, and you are correct. I do enjoy a pie at the football. I don't know, I'm trying not to go off kind of recency bias, but the one from the last home game, not St Johnstone just there, but Hibs, it was, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, chicken, black pudding and peppercorn sauce, and it was divine. It was honestly so good. There was one earlier in the season, I think it was steak and black pudding as well, which was very, very good. And a special shout out as well to doner meat and chili sauce. I think that was phenomenal too. But you know, for me it's gonna have to go to the chicken, black pudding and peppercorn. Or maybe it was chicken haggis and peppercorn. Well, that was, you know, it was tremendous. Really, really was. It was up there. You know, we often speak about St Johnstone's pies, Ross County's pies, but for me that was right up there with them. You know, always loving a away day to Perth or Dingwall to supplement the pies, but you know, they've brought them here. It was tremendous. Really, really a massive fan of that pie that we had. Hibs at home. So for me, that takes the gold medal along with a silver and bronze for the doner meat and chili, and the bronze would go to steak and black pudding. What about yourself?
Now, I mean, you've said that that's your gold medal position. You couldn't even remember what was in the pie. I mean, that's controversial in itself, is it not? But I like an out there pie. I like something which I genuinely go, I've never seen that before. And the one that surprised me the most, I genuinely didn't think it was going to be that great, and it genuinely took me by surprise, was the burger, cheese and beans pie.
Oh, that was good.
I like, when I read it, I was like, that just shouldn't work in the slightest. Like that should be illegal. Like what they're doing with that. It was unbelievable. It's one of the best pies I've ever had at the football. I couldn't believe it. The other one, I thought the breakfast pie was great.
Breakfast pie was great.
I love square sausage. I love black pudding. I love bacon. I love beans. And I love a pie. Put them together. Oh my God. That's just pie heaven. You know, it's just a concoction of beautiful things all put together to make an even more beautiful thing. And me and Andy have a debate about pies on a regular basis on travels to away games. I mean, I argue that the haggis, neeps and tatty pie up at Ross County is the best in the league. Andy argues the steak and chorizo pie at St Johnstone. My biggest argument with that is that it's got a soggy bottom and it becomes a nightmare to eat. Whilst the physics and the construction of that haggis, neeps and tatty pie is just a work of architecture, that pie as well. Never mind just the taste and everything. But our pie game has been sensational this year. It's honestly been sensational. And big credit has to go to the Food to Go guys who run the kiosks as well. But is there any other pie? Has there been a pie that's not lived up to your expectation, Broonie, this year?
I can't say that there has. Actually, there was one at the weekend, which I actually never had, but I'd recommended it to one of the St Johnstone media guys, and they'd tried it and they weren't a big fan. It was the salt and chili Scotch pie, which I think the guy just said it was a Scotch pie with a bit of seasoning in it. So, well, no, not to be disrespectful. I never had it myself, so I can't really comment. But no, that was the vibe I got. But I've just sat with my head on my hands for about 2 minutes because I forgot the breakfast pie when you mentioned it there. So it's going to seem a bit controversial, but so the gold is going to stay with the peppercorn sauce one, which I forget what was in it. I just know it was chicken and something and peppercorn because that was unbelievable. Silver is going to go to the breakfast pie because I can't believe I forgot it. It was so good. So the steak and black pudding will just drop out, and then bronze will go to doner meat and chili because I'm not even a big fan of doner meat. That was the one that surprised me the most. The chili sauce was so good, and I think they had that for 2 or 3 games. Look at us, man! What a podcast! Scottish football, Livingston, for the physics in that of pies. You wouldn't get it anywhere else.
The one picture I remember from this season of pies, and I have to say it probably sums up everything about their season, was the picture of the pie at Dens Park that an Aberdeen fan posted.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, I don't know how you can describe the colour of black that this steak pie was, but I mean, it's more black than what the darkest black is on a Dulux colours chart. Like, that's how burnt this thing was. What surprised me most about it was the guy taking a bite out of it. Like that's the bit that threw me most about it, is the fact that the guy's taking a bite out of it. I mean, I bet there's a pride aspect of it, and he didn't want to be that fan that goes back down to the pie kiosk and goes, "Oh, could I get a different pie, please? This one's a bit burnt." But that was a disaster. But speaking of pie games improving, I have to say, I'd never been to Pittodrie and had a decent pie at Pittodrie. Very similar to that Dundee pie.
Great show.
Horrendous. They're always burnt, always just rubbish. And you need to take a trip to the dentist the following day after having a pie out there. But their chicken pie, by the way, is superb, I have to say. So Glenn, if you're listening from Red Tinted Glasses, I have to say your chicken pie is a massive improvement on Pittodrie's overall pie game this season. But
I'd just like to say as well, you know, if we're talking about improving the overall game, we've got to be in the top 3 at least now. Because I used to wouldn't say dread going to the kiosk. Wouldn't say that. I'm a guy that likes my food. I would never dread going to a kiosk, right? But it used to be very underwhelming. You used to go, "Oh, I'm just having a pie for the sake of it," or, you know, "I'll get this and it's not that great, but it'll fill a hole." But I genuinely enjoy going to the pie stall now. So for me, it's definitely up there now with St Johnstone and Ross County, two grounds of which are a nightmare to get to, and very rarely see a good game there, especially McDermott Park. Although Ross County we do, but yeah, I go there for the pies, and now Livingston are right up there with them. So delighted with that.
I know Scott McCrory, who I've been on the Homeboys podcast for Celtic a few times. I can't remember what pie. I think it was the breakfast pie that we had out, and he had, I think, a tad of a meltdown on Twitter because he said his wee boy asked for a hot dog, which I think is controversial at the best of times. At the hot dog at the football, you're not in America.
Not in America, mate. Come on.
But anyway, Scott, I'll let it slide because it's your wee boy. But you know, he was saying the only place he's managed to get a hot dog this season, he's never been able to get one at Celtic Park, but he was able to get one at Livy, and now we've introduced this breakfast pie out of nowhere. He's just like, "Come on, Celtic, pull your finger out." And I mean, that's arguably the biggest club in the country, the champions, and we're outdoing them on the pie front. That's sensational. That's
Celtic
sensational.
and Rangers pies are honking.
I'm going to disagree. Rangers do a pie of the month, and it tends to actually be not too bad, to be fair. But the problem is there only tends to be about 7 Livy fans turn up at Ibrox, so their selection of pies tends to be quite limited. They don't bring a lot in because there's not an awful lot of people there to buy said pies. So, yeah. By the way, I never compliment Rangers Football Club on anything.
True.
So it says a lot that I'm giving them a compliment, albeit it's a very hollow compliment in saying that their pie of the month selection tends to be pretty decent. But that's as far as I will go in terms of complimenting Rangers Football Club. But is it a breakfast pie? No. Is it a burger, cheese and beans pie?
no, nothing as out there as that. But so, Bruni, yours is going to the pie that you can't even remember what's in it. It was a chicken and haggis pie. To clarify, a Balmoral pie. Some would refer.
That was it.
My award's going to I think I'm going to go with the burger, cheese and beans pie because it caught me off guard. It was the most surprising pie of the season, I have to say, and also surprised me that it was so bloody good. But it was so closely run by the breakfast pie.
There have been a plethora of perfect pies. There we go. How's that for alliteration? I think we'll probably do a tweet at some point after we release the episode. We'll ask you to vote for your pie the season as well. Will you agree with us? Who knows? Have we missed one? Who knows? Feel free to comment.
I mean, it's something that all Scottish football fans can get behind as a pie at the football, let's be honest. And I agree with Bruni. We'll obviously put a tweet out during the week of what our discussions involved. But get in touch, let us know what your pie of the season has been. It can be a game, it can be from away games as well. It doesn't have to be Livingston, but I mean, I have to say our pies have been pretty bloody decent this year. So big shout out to the good folks at the kiosk from Food to Go. What a job you've done in terms of producing the pies this year. Honestly, you've kept us well fed at the Tony Macaroni Arena this campaign. So keep it up next campaign as well. And I can't wait to see what we've got on the final day against Dundee.
Next up for the Lions is a trip to Paisley to take on St Mirren in our final away trip of the campaign. Euan and St Mirren come into this one in quite good form. 2 wins in their last 2 and 2 clean sheets in that time as well. We seem to have turned a wee bit of a corner under Stephen Robinson. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think it's become a more difficult game than what it probably looked like a couple of weeks ago. Robinson was a pretty bold appointment from St Mirren, given I would say that Jim Goodwin's had a lot of success there in the time. I think they've made progress season on season, and wasn't overly surprised when he was being linked with the Aberdeen job. I have a lot of time for Jim Goodwin. I think he's a good manager, and if given time at Pittodrie will turn things round. But Stephen Robinson, I believe, he was coming under pressure right from the get-go, replacing a club legend like Goodwin, but I also believe he's coming as St Mirren's highest ever paid manager. I think that was made public when they announced it. So, that comes with pressure in itself. And then not a great start. I think he's been since Goodwin's left, they've had 12 games. They'd only won 1 up until recently, which was away at Dundee. And I think he's been very public in talking about some players leaving the club as well, which isn't great, questioning their commitment to the cause. So again, it looked like they were maybe going to get dragged into that playoff. As you say, a couple of big wins on the bounce for them, especially up at McDermott Park, where I believe they have quite a poor record as well. So, getting that one pretty much made them safe. And then the win at the weekend against Dundee confirms that. So, it's a decent tail end to the season for them, but they're not a team I think you need to fear. We've probably been a bit unlucky this season in the games against St Mirren. The first game, they beat us at the Tony Macaroni Arena. I don't think we deserved to lose the game, certainly. There's probably a goalkeeping mistake which has cost us in the end. The last game at St Mirren was very even. I think a draw was a fair result. We managed to rescue a point late on. Nicky Devlin scored a cracker, and then the most recent game, I think, they had 1 shot on goal and rescued a point late on. So the game's kind of similar to St Johnstone. The games between ourselves and St Mirren are always really tight, fiercely contested, and it's going to be a very difficult game. Let's be honest. As I say, they've come into it in a bit more form. I noticed that Connor Ronan's out injured, who's their joint top goal scorer with Eamon Brophy, both on 7. And I think that's where their problems have mainly been this year, which is scoring goals. The third lowest goal scorers in the league with 33. And then their defensive record's not held up to much either. Conceded 51, so I think that's the ninth worst in the league. So they're in that kind of, you would say, a transition phase with with Robinson coming in the door, and it really does frustrate me that Robinson talks about this brand of football that he plays. I've never failed to see this brand of football that he talks about all the time. It really, really grinds on me. He seems to think these teams play a really attractive brand of football, because I don't get it. But yeah, it'll be a tough game, but hopefully we can go there and give the fans that have travelled home and away this season a one last hurrah away from home, and hopefully pick up another win on the road.
Yeah, it's great pricing as well, I have to say, from St Mirren. Hopefully encourages a decent away crowd along. We can get behind the boys for the last away game of the season. I think it's St Mirren, one of 4 teams that we haven't beaten this season. Rangers and Hearts, fair enough. Motherwell's probably the most frustrating one, and we probably should have over the course of the season. But St Mirren as well, to go a full season and not beat St Mirren would be a bit of an annoying one, I think, because we're a better team than them. But, as you've said, it's a wee bit similar in terms of St Johnstone. Well, to be fair, we beat them in the cup. We beat them in the cup on penalties, but I'm meaning in the league. Yeah, they are. They do sometimes have our number a wee bit. They're often games that we dominate, but we get sucker punched, and St Mirren manage the game well. That kind of phrase of shithouse it, basically, if we're putting it bluntly. They sit in, they soak up the pressure, ride their luck a wee bit, but in a few games this season we've not been clinical enough. Mostly that 1-1 game at home, 1-1 away. I don't think we were at our best when Nicky scored late on. I would say the equaliser was deserved in that one, but I wouldn't say St Mirren's equaliser was deserved. I think Greg Kiltie scored in the most recent game, so that one was a wee bit tough to take. And earlier this season as well, the 1-0, it's just a nothing counter-attack really from Erehon, who's hit the ball off balance at the goalie, and Max should save it. Max will know that, but they've been frustrating encounters this season. I just hope there's something a wee bit more to shout about. As I said, not been good to watch either. So hopefully, with St Mirren now in a decent spell of form, that they'll think that they can go and take all 3 points, and they won't sit in. The onus won't be on us. It'll be a kind of even game. It's not one I'm massively looking forward to, but on our day we're capable of beating them, as I've said. So, but you mentioned there the joint third lowest scorers, that maybe could play into our hands. It's a game we'll probably create chances in. It's just whether or not we'll take them. To be fair, I would say if we win, that's probably 7th, barring a disaster. Obviously Hibs have got Dundee, which you'd maybe expect them to win, but Dundee fighting for their lives. So a point's probably not necessarily a bad result, depending on what that Hibs score is. Obviously, we'll be aiming for 7th. So as you also alluded to, I don't think many would have thought St Mirren would have been going for 7th, especially if they'd have lost to St Johnstone last week. They'd have been right in it alongside St Johnstone, looking at a potential playoff. So they've done well to turn it around a wee bit, and they'll obviously be buoyed by that as we've spoken about the 2 wins and 2 clean sheets in their last couple of games. So again, you said it, Euan, but it's one that's going to be a wee bit more interesting than what it looked like a few weeks ago, for sure.
Kind of similar to the St Johnstone game to an extent, in that I think the first goal is going to be very important in it. Obviously, this season we have gone ahead against St Mirren and not held on to the lead, but they didn't create an awful lot of chances when they were at. In fact, I struggle to say they created any chances in the game really in the last game at Livi. So I think if we can take the lead in the game, I think we have the tools at our disposal to hopefully see the game out and be very difficult to break down. But it depends how the players approach the game. As you said, St Mirren have now all of a sudden got a chance of finishing 7th, which I'm sure will be their revised aim going into the last couple of games of the season. So I'm sure they'll be trying to impress. I think that'll probably be their final home game of the campaign as well. So they'll look to end it on a high, I'm sure. Whilst ourselves, kind of felt for spells off the game on Saturday against St Johnstone. It did seem very end of season like. So hopefully the players are going into the game realising that we've still got an aim, which is to finish as high up the table as possible, i.e. 7th place. But do you see us making any wholesale changes for the game? I know we stayed unchanged for the St Johnstone game, same team that beat Hibs. You see any changes possibly coming in?
I'm not really sure. I'd quite like to see maybe one or two. There are a couple, looking at the bench where maybe there's a few that you're uncertain on the future of. Obviously, you've got boys on loan that probably won't come back. We know Forrest is more than likely away. Probably he's linked with Dundee United and Hearts, I believe. So it's a good thing. Davey said it's about 90% of the squad's going to be staying, or 90% of the starting 11. So there's just maybe one or two that you're unsure on in terms of being starters for next season or being involved. Christian Montano's somebody that I'd quite like to see maybe given a start because, he's yet to score. But you can tell that there's something there. He was a real fan favourite at Port Vale, a decent standard. He's obviously a good player. He showed it in flashes. He's just probably not really been given that run. So maybe him in for Odin Bailey, potentially, although Odin's obviously been decent in the last few games. Should have scored at the weekend, but I'd quite like to see Christian maybe in from the left or in from the right. Other than that, I'm not really sure. I don't mind Morgan Boys at left back. Maybe is it harsh to say Ayo's been off it the last few games? Maybe you could argue you move Morgan Boys in one. He partners Fitzwater. That could be. I'm just trying to think of examples of trying different partnerships or something like that. Although for the full season, Ayo and Fitzy have been terrific, and that's no slight on Ayo because it's just been a couple of poor games he's had. But maybe you move Morgan in one. I don't know. You play Jackson Longridge at left back, or you play Adam Lewis potentially, or even you try Christian Montano at left back. He's versatile in that. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of potential players you could put in to try in those positions. But obviously, it's not as if we're going to be fully experimenting, and there's not nothing to play for. So I'd be happy to answer your question. I'd be happy with the team that played on Saturday, but I wouldn't be against seeing an experiment or two.
I think a lot of what we're seeing just now in the team selection, obviously Connavalos had to come in for Max, but I think he would have been given these games at the tail end of the season once we were safe. So I can see him staying in between the sticks going forward for the rest of the campaign. But I think a lot of it's to see a bit more of players that maybe, as you say, not had that run of games this season. I think that's why Morgan's came in at left back, certainly to get a better look at him in a game scenario. I think Sean Kelly as well, that's obviously one that Davies said he's looking to offer him a deal for next year. So he's looking to see what he can offer in terms of centre midfield role. And Andrew Shinney's another one we know is going to be there next year, but has maybe not had a real consecutive run of starts in the team. He's played various positions over the campaign, right-hand side, false nine, centre mid. So he's having a run of games out in that left-hand side, which I'm sure is good for him. So I'm sure that's probably Davies' thinking going forward is where he'd like to see him play. So, I think a lot of the team selection in recent weeks has probably been with an eye towards next season anyway. In terms of the St Mirren game, it's obviously not a final game this season. We finish up the season against Dundee. Flashbacks to the 04-05 season where we relegated Dundee on the final day of the season. Could we be doing the same again? It does rely on a miracle, which involves Dundee winning a game of football, though, during the week. So how are you looking forward to our final game of the campaign against Dundee?
Yeah, as you said, it depends on the midweek result. I think they play Hibs tomorrow at home. So, you never know. The goal difference isn't massively stacked against them. I think it's a 7-goal swing that they need, as well as they'd need to win both, and St Johnstone need to lose both. So it would probably take a miracle. You're right. I think Dundee on -31, which is laughable in itself, and St Johnstone on -24. That could be wrong, but I think that's just off the top of my head. But no, it's a game. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it as such. Obviously, it'll depend on what we do. It's a game that I'd fancy us to win, but if Dundee are still in with a fighting chance, maybe they beat Hibs and Aberdeen, maybe put 2 or 3 past St Johnstone, it makes it well and truly alive. So they'd be right up for it. You're just you're assuming all those sort of narratives happen. 12 games without a win under Mark McGee. You've got written down here, Euan, it's not great, is it? I know he's come out in the press, he's made a few kind of strange comments, shall we say. Yeah, that's not pretty. I don't know. I'd probably rather that they were relegated before they came to us. I know there's that rivalry, the old kind of rivalry, and the Tam McManus photo back in the day. But I think even for us as well, it's probably better if they are down, in terms of our chances of winning the game as well. Not saying that we can't beat Dundee when they're fighting for their lives, because we scudded them 4-0 the last time we played them, and they had a lot to play for on that day. So I do feel either way we can beat them, but maybe if I'm trying to be kind, I'd rather that they were down before we played them, and then it's almost a formality, hopefully. But no, it's not nice to see a team go down. I know you're probably smirking away there. I'm trying to put my professional head on, but and thank you guys as people. But yeah, it depends if Charlie Adam will play or not. Probably, if we put them on a plate for us or not. We obviously saw at the weekend his exceptional assist. So yeah, it's just a bit of a carnival really at Dundee at the moment, which I'm sure you'll be loving, Euan.
I wouldn't say I'm not enjoying it. I think Mark McGee's been the best addition to the Cinch this campaign. I think he's been absolutely box office with some of the things he's come out with.
He has been box office.
He's been tremendous. His commitment to Cinch Patter is, as I say, it is unrivaled. His commitment to it. I mean, talk about coming in, first of all, for a manager that had only lost, one game in 6 or something like that. And McPake won his last 2. He comes in, probably an old pals act in terms of Strachan being involved there. Some of the comments, I mean, the phone incident when we played them at Dens Park, the laddie going up to them with the phone. We all know how Mark McGee dislikes phones, cameras on them. Then some of the comments he's come out with have just been utterly perplexing. I think he turned around and said, I told the guys that you're not going to win many games. I mean, that must make players feel absolutely 10 foot tall walking out the tunnel when you tell them, you're probably not going to win today. The comment he made about switching his heating off and going on a diet, to me, it just screamed that his wife had left him, to be honest. I'm sure that's not the case if anyone is listening, and I'm not jumping to conclusions, but him talking about, and then he came out and said, he said he would turn up naked to training if they won. Well, no wonder Dundee didn't win the game. He'd be wanting the guy to keep his clothes on. So surely the incentive would have been, I will turn up naked if you don't win the game. Like that would have been the incentive there for the players to get him to keep his kit on. But I find the whole situation at Dundee just utterly baffling. And Mark McGee has been pivotal towards that. They've got 0 bounce out of it. And I know a few Dundee fans that I've spoken to where they've never at any point felt they could get behind Mark McGee coming in. And that's probably reflected in terms of the performances on the park. I mean, even your big players like Charlie Adam at the weekend there against St Mirren. I mean, this is a guy that's played top flight football down south for Liverpool and for Scotland. What's he doing? Like, I can't, for the life of me, can't fathom out what he's attempting to do. Even if he's trying to pass it back to the goalkeeper, he's fired it in at his chest. It's as I say, it's completely baffling. But there's a reason they're sitting bottom of the table. I think they've got the worst defensive record in the league by, a good 6 or 7 goals, and they've got the second worst forward line in the league. I think scored 30 over the course of the season. So it's just it explains everything. They aren't scoring a lot of goals and they're conceding plenty at the back. Look back to the last game at Dens Park with ourselves. I've never seen a ground empty after 20 minutes. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and it's just a very strange situation what's going on at Dundee. And I know you're talking about you'd rather them be already relegated. I think they will be. I can't see where Dundee are picking up a win from. Mm-hmm. You spoke about it there. There's 12 games under McGee. They've not won any of them, and a lot of them they've shown very little in terms of a bit of fight about them. They almost look resigned to it, and they've looked resigned to it almost since Mark McGee's come in the door. And he's talking about he doesn't know whether he'll be there next season. I'd be absolutely astounded if Mark McGee is still at Dundee Football Club next year, because just for the life of me, can't fathom out how he thinks he'll stay in a job after the complete and utter collapse when it looked like they'd started to get a bit of rhythm going under McPake. for me, if you look at the game we had when they were relegated a few seasons back, I think our first season back up, it was our last home game, and they beat us.
Yeah,
Kenny Miller scored. So there's no guarantees in these games. As I say, we spoke about them almost down in tools, but sometimes teams, once they're down, they play with that little bit more freedom about them sometimes and try and get a bounce going into the following campaign. So you really don't know what to expect from Dundee to an extent, depending on the result, obviously, against Hibs during the week. But I can't see Hibs losing to that Dundee team just now. I really can't. And I think they will be relegated come the time of the game. But to talk about the game itself, I know we've reduced our prices for that game as well, going into the final home game. Just a reminder to fans that it is a 12 o'clock kick-off on a Sunday. I know that's strange to think that a game against Dundee will be a 12 o'clock game on a Sunday. There's no TV involved. Let's make that very clear. But hopefully we can get a few bodies down, take advantage of the prices and get a bumper crowd to cheer the boys on for what, in my opinion, has still been a very successful season for the football club.
and just briefly on personnel, I know we spoke about who we'd like to see involved for the St Mirren game. There's a man I'd love to see involved on the last home game of the season, potentially his last game in his career, and that would be Gary Malley.
It would be beautiful, wouldn't it? I saw Ivan go down at the weekend and Gary was straight out the dugout, getting ready. The bib was going on. And then Ivan got up within a few seconds. I felt gutted for the big man. He was so eager. the eagerness of Gary to get warmed up and ready to come on. It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It would be some story as well. I think I was saying this to your dad, because your dad obviously sits just along from us at the games, but I was discussing it with him. Do you think there's a player that's played less than 10 games for your club that is so widely adored by all fans as Gary Malley is? I don't think there is.
No, I'd agree.
Big Stretch is just widely adored by fans, and I think he takes it all in very good spirit. The gags and stuff like that will go on, but it would be superb to see him. I think it would be good. There's a few players that we've mentioned that could be leaving the club in the summer. I'm looking at the guys that are out of contract, the likes of your Alan Forrest, possibly Craig Sibyl, Jack McMillan. We're talking about here. Hopefully they can get a run out if it is going to be their last game for the football club. It would be nice to give them a send off, because I think that was something last year with COVID. There was guys like Alan Lithgow who didn't get probably the send off he deserved from the supporters, considering what he's helped the football club achieve over the years. So it would be nice for some of these guys to get that little send off that they deserve for their efforts in terms of helping the club achieve what they've managed over the last few years.
And just briefly on Gary Malley, spoke to him after the game on Saturday, ahead of the game coming up against Dundee. He will be the cover for the programme. So that's actually one of my favourite interviews I've done. Genuinely, such a likeable guy. He's self-deprecating. He says he knows his limitations and things like that, but he's so thankful for the support from fans. He was just a guy. He said that Davy phoned him up when we were in League One, and he said, Davy had spent his budget on forward players and he needed a backup to Liam Kelly, and he won League One. He's come up through the playoffs, and he's now he's about to finish his fourth season as a number 2, number 3 goalkeeper in the top flight. So it's a wonderful story, and I'm sure we'd all love to see him get that run out, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's the full game. I think he'd cope. I genuinely do.
Did he mention that his highlight was saving my penalty at half time back in the
Didn't
championship?
know. I think it was probably the penalty he saved at Tannadice, despite getting beat 3-0. But
yeah, I hope to God he doesn't remember my penalty. I don't want to remember my penalty. It was bloody pathetic. I might as well have told Gary I'm going to your left. It was signposted to him pretty much. But yeah, one of my most embarrassing moments in my life. Try and not relive it too often. But no, hopefully we can get a few extra bodies down to the ground, as I say, take advantage of the pricing for the game. But first of all, we'll go prediction for midweek against St Mirren. Broonie, what are you going for?
0-0. Blunt as you like. 0-0.
You're all about thrills, aren't you? I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go another one each. I'm going to go for. You're currently top of the prediction league as well, so I need to try and claw something back, hopefully, with 2 games to go. And Dundee, what are you expecting for the Dundee game?
Again, probably depends on the result, but I'll back us and I'll go 2-0 Livy.
I'm going to go one more. I'm going to go 3-0 Livy.
Love it.
At home to Dundee. I'm going to go for another bit of a spanking for Mark McGee's men and sending them down to the Championship off the back of that. But here's hoping we can get a couple of positive results to help secure 7th spot in the league.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks very much again to every single one of you for tuning in week in, week out. If you can, we'd absolutely love to hear your feedback. So either leave us a review on iTunes or simply give us a message on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. We'll take any criticism or any positive feedback that you're willing to give us.
As Broonie said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode that we've done over the last few years.
That's it from us for this week, though. Thanks again to all the listeners for tuning in. And let's hope it's another great week following the Lothian's finest football team.
Livingston, oh Livingston, to the